criticism of Peter Dutton's plan for new divestiture powers to break up major hardware and grocery retailers has hit a roadblock within his own party, it seems. Let's go live now to Canberra. A very good morning to the Deputy Opposition Leader Sussan Ley. Sussan, good to see you this morning. So reports in The Australian suggest that some Liberal MPs felt ambushed over your divestiture policy. Is there a split in the coalition over it?
No, there's not, Pete, and there was a debate and lots of different views were expressed. I'm a proud Liberal, and within that party room I enjoy that exchange of ideas. Out of that party room discussion came the policy that you saw later announced, which is about putting the supermarkets on notice, backing in consumers, backing in families with the price of groceries, and backing in our farmers, many of whom I represent. And unfortunately, there have been stories over the years of farmers not being treated well. Introducing, as we would, a supermarket commissioner who would receive confidential information and be able to assist in, as I said, putting supermarkets on notice. So this is a good policy, it's a strong policy, and it's all about addressing and helping people with the cost of living. But Pete, I want to contrast this with the Labor Party, who treat their members like clones. While we had a free debate, while we discussed the issues, while we all talked in our party room, there is a young woman, a young new senator in this parliament who's made a statement that she's been intimidated inside the Labor caucus. And Anthony Albanese answered my question in parliament yesterday by saying, all of the caucus voted to, exclude her. So is he relying on his caucus members to sort of do something that he won't in terms of Senator Payman? And why won't he address the questions that we're asking about intimidation of a young woman in this parliament when he said he would protect young women?
OK, just back to your plan for divestiture. Jeff Kennett reckons it's madness. The Australian Retailers Association fears it would set a dangerous precedent. So what happened to the traditional Liberal values of a free market?
I would say to people who make those comments, take a deep breath, look in detail at what we're proposing, note that there is a public interest test, there is safety for shareholders and for jobs, and it is a last resort big stick, if you like. The introduction of a supermarket commissioner is about having that avenue for people to discuss what might be going wrong from their point of view if they are a provider of fresh food to a supermarket, for example, and they feel that they're not being looked after. The Food and Grocery Code, which is now voluntary, should be mandatory. People have been saying that for years, Pete. And as I said, this is about looking after consumers with the cost of living and making sure that supermarkets do the right thing.
Right, yeah. I mean, as you know, the government had its report. The ACCC's got one in the works. Why not at least wait until that's finished before coming up with your own plan?
Well, why would we wait for the government on anything? I mean, they get everything wrong and they don't listen to consumers and they don't listen to families and they don't care about the cost of living. So while they muddle through this and a whole lot of other policies, you're talking to the Treasurer about future made in Australia. I've got some questions I'd quite like you to pass on to him, Pete. We're getting on with it and we're demonstrating that what we do and what we say is about looking after communities that don't get a proper economic plan from this government that actually backs them in.
OK, well, that legislation, Future Made in Australia, it is being introduced today. Presumably you've got concerns over it. What are they?
There was $45 million allocated in the budget for an advertisement campaign for Future Made in Australia. The test for the Treasurer and this government is, will we see the ads before we see any dollars allocated to funding any projects? Because to front run something like this with a $45 million campaign, now this is the second apparently Future Made in Australia proposal that the government has brought forward. They talked about something as they came into government and it turned into the National Reconstruction Fund, $15 billion of off-budget spend, which actually hasn't spent a single cent on a single project to back in a single manufacturer. Meanwhile, Pete, while this sort of jargon floats around in Labor Party HQ, we don't have a proper plan for Australian manufacturers, tripling in insolvencies since this government came to office. How can you have a future made in Australia when you can't keep the lights on today?
All right, Sussan Ley, appreciate that. Thank you so much. And